We don't.
We have a spirit of good enough.
You know what? Good enough gets it done sometimes.
Sometimes.
Hello, welcome to
Pro-Life Without Borders. You better leave that in there.
I will.
It's
I will.
perfect.
Because good enough is good enough. I'm not editing it out.
So we do have a nice camera, and we do have a nice mic, and we do have a very fancy mixer, but we are still us.
This is, at this point, a competency issue, and I'm not afraid to admit it.
Well, and I think too, there's like a certain limit to our interests. Like we want to sit and go off about various pro-life things. We don't really want to sit and fuss with technology.
I want to do the fun part.
Yeah. We need, okay, so maybe you out there, you're a podcast editor and you're like, man, I am so passionate about this. Just let us know.
Just let us know. But how would that even work? Because we don't have a schedule.
We do have a schedule. It's just very last minute. It's very much like I go into your office and I'm like, my makeup looks good. Do you want a podcast today? And then you say yes or no. Yeah. That's a schedule. It's just not a very...
It's not a consistent one.
Anyway. We could be more scheduled.
We could be more scheduled. Yeah. At this point, I think we're limited to the space we have. Like, I can only do so much with the camera angle before I hit the wall, and we're out of...
It's true.
We're out of camera angles.
It's true. We'd have to, like, open up. And I've already convinced Chuck to let me knock down, like, 2 walls. I feel like 3 might be his limit. Chuck is our landlord, by the way.
Yeah. Like, I don't even know what wall we would...
like, the hallway, we would have to build into, like, the stairwell. Which is admittedly not used space. Like, the upper part, no one is
I think this is, like, over the stairwell, isn't it?
Right, yeah. So we could still walk under it, and then we could build into, like, the over part of the stairwell. So my office would get bigger, and we would have to, like, just duck under it.
This feels like
on the stairwell.
A lot of work, like, beyond.
Because
now we have to make a new floor. Anyway,
we probably won't do that, so this is what we've got.
Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about our international chat line, which we love talking about, and we're specifically going to talk about countries. So every once in a while, we add a new country, and there's a couple different ways that can happen. So the first way, and I would say the more common way, is that someone from a country just messages us.
Yeah, that's definitely like an organic traffic. We didn't do anything special to reach out to them. They just popped up.
Yeah, they're like, hello, I found your page. Please talk to me. And a lot of the time what we're finding is the people who are messaging us may be from a country, but they're actually, or they may be, I should say, in a country, but they're actually from Africa.
Yeah, I would say a huge chunk of the countries that we've reached that aren't in Africa are because an African traveled to those countries.
And then they messaged us.
So we're counting them as like, hey, we reached a woman in Belgium, but it was a Kenyan who's studying abroad.
Which is fine.
Yeah, which is really great, actually.
And then we try to keep track of those things, because sometimes what can happen is, so like the algorithm shows our page to a girl in Belgium because she has friends in Africa. And so the algorithm is like, oh, you must be interested in this. And then it starts showing it to other girls in Belgium. So as soon as we get one person from a country, we start kind of shoring up our resources.
Yeah.
Like looking, do they have do they have a national chat line or hotline for pregnancy? Do they have pregnancy centers? You know, what are their abortion laws? And we start to try to build a picture, even if we never get another client, of what that country looks like and how we could help people from that country. Because sometimes it starts to become a little bit of a snowball.
I was about to say, like I remember we never know what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Like sometimes we get one woman from the country.
We literally never know.
And yeah, I've got at any given point, I have no idea what's going to happen. But sometimes we get a woman from a country and she's the only one. And we talk to her and, you know, we get her the help she needs. And then we never hear from someone from that country again.
Right. So far.
Other times we get someone from a new country, and then the next week we get another person, and then 3 weeks later there's so many of them.
And those are always fun.
Those are really fun. I think like the Philippines has kind of been that way for us. Like the
Philippines definitely waxes and wanes. Like sometimes it's like Filipino Central, and then we won't hear from anyone in the Philippines for like weeks on end, and then the next thing I know, it's Filipino Central again.
It's really like
But I would love it if
that's one of the mysteries I need to solve is just the Philippines.
Just put it on a post-it note. So we'd actually love to advertise to Manila, because Manila has a ton of pregnancy centers. It's very easy to reach women, relatively easy for them to access help. But the problem with the Philippines is it is a chain of islands. And so you can't like boat from one island to another. And there's no way to well, I shouldn't say no way because we actually haven't tried. But we're reasonably sure we can't target an ad so specifically that we only catch women in Manila.
Well, that's the thing, is that when we run an ad on the chat line and we can control to some extent the boundaries of that ad, we also have to take into account what's nearby. And so if we have to do that even with countries, let alone specific islands in the Philippines. And then also the Philippines is so diverse that you could get someone from Manila, but we might also be getting people from Cebu City. And so they speak a different language. And then you start getting into Mindanao, which is where like the Islamic people like
it starts to snowball really quickly. It starts
to snowball really fast. If you know the mystery of the Philippines,
you can message us. You can email us, podcast@promiseoflifenetwork.org. Please enlighten us.
Yeah, I'm related to Filipinos.
Me too.
They're no help to me. They're no help at all.
We could message Ruthie right now and she will know less about the Philippines than you and I, even though she was made in the United States with Filipino components. Anyway,
yes. So when we run ads, we have to think about what surrounds them. And so we're particular about where we run ads.
And it's not so much that we don't feel like a certain country deserves help or needs help. It's more about what can we provide. And so some of the things that we just listed off as concerns about the Philippines aren't that we don't want to help Islamic girls or girls who are in Cebu City or whatever. It's that we can't reach them. So the Google Translate really struggles with Cebuano.
Yeah,
like
it's
really
bad.
really struggles. Like it does better with
tribal
languages that have like an extremely small reach, and Google Translate is like on it. And then we try to use Cebuano and it's like I cannot. I don't know what it's saying.
Yeah, I don't know why that is.
I don't either. And then the other issue is that one island that you mentioned that has a heavy Islamic population, Mindanao. Yeah, it's not just that they're Islamic, it's that it's very militant, and it would be very difficult to help women in that type of circumstance. And talking to us could actually make their lives infinitely harder.
Right.
If someone would find out that they had been talking to Americans or to people who are not Islamic.
Right.
And so it's not so much like, oh, we want to help these people, but we don't want to help these other people. It's more about who can we provide the best help to? So while we will help anyone who comes to us and we'll do our best, we only target countries, areas where we feel like we can provide something substantial. And so that's actually been a really neat way. When the chat first started, it was very much random. It was whoever messaged us. We were getting really high volumes, but it was really all over the place. And over the last year or two, we've really been able to sort of control the flow of traffic using advertising. And so we will boost ads to one country on Monday and another country on Tuesday. Most of our clients will come from that country, and it gives our volunteers, they're like, oh, I know that 90% of my clients are going to be South African today. So they're kind of ready with like those cultural norms, that type of geography, those abortion laws, and those resources.
And it's also, like you said, resources. The ads that we run are in countries that we have a relationship of some sort with the resource there. And so South Africa, we're very close with the resources that we have in South Africa. They're well established, so they're not necessarily, I mean, I think all of pregnancy help struggles, but they're not like
struggling.
They're not, like they're aware of the clients we're sending them, and they can handle the load that we send them.
And we have a very, like, the relationship is very back and forth. So like we had a client that was in a really tricky situation a couple weeks ago, and I was able to message like the literal head of their network and be like, hey, incoming.
Right.
Like this is bizarre. We've got some crazy stuff going on. I want to make sure she gets help, but also like this is coming your way.
Yeah.
And so we have that relationship where we can really go like back and forth.
Yeah. And I've even had the pleasure of meeting the head of that.
We took her out to dinner.
Yeah. I was like,
to a bar accidentally. Were you there that time?
Were we at the same conference? No.
This was separate conferences.
No, the separate conferences, yes. But we also ended up at a bar at mine too.
She probably thinks we're drunkards.
Probably. I just remember her asking like, what's no, you weren't at this one because we were at Heartbeat.
Okay. And where was I?
I don't know, but I took her out to dinner, and it was myself and Mary Jo, and we were in Louisville, Kentucky, and the South Africans, bless them, were like, what should we drink while we're here? And I'm not from Louisville, Kentucky, and so I was like, mint juleps. And it was also like right before the Kentucky Derby.
Okay.
So we were like, mint juleps are what we should get. Like this would be like a good mint juleps are gross.
Had you ever had a mint julep?
No, I hadn't.
Okay. So,
I just thought like, oh, this would be
so
like,
appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like it was appropriate, but it was terrible. And they were like, this is straight alcohol. And I was like, you're so right.
So I really don't drink. You know that.
Yeah.
Like I'm not against drinking. I just don't drink. And so
I have better things to spend money on.
Right. I never drink when I'm out because I drink so rarely. I'm convinced I'll accidentally get completely hammered. It's never happened, but maybe it could. I don't know. But we were trying to find a restaurant that had something gluten-free for me. And I feel like I was with Diane. I don't even remember. And we ended up at a bar and I was like, well, this is awkward. And they were going to have like karaoke night.
Yeah. No, we had shrimp and grits. I do remember that. We had some baller shrimp and grits.
Can you say baller on the podcast?
Why couldn't I?
I don't know. It sounds bad. Is it bad?
I don't think so.
Okay, we're good. Never mind.
I'll research. Okay. If it's terrible, we'll just edit this out.
Okay. Anyway, so suffice to say,
we have a very good relationship with our partners in South Africa,
and we've also met, or at least I've met Barbara Mwanza from pregnancy. What's their? Oh, I just blanked.
Africa for Life.
Africa for Life. Yeah, I was gonna say Pregnancy Health Network. But
that's AFLA.
So AFLA, Africa for Life, and then you have also met our partners in Uganda and Kenya.
Yeah. I was able to go to the facilities in Kenya. So those are the countries that we tend to run ads in, are these places that we have at least some level of established relationship with.
And then another country that we run ads in is Togo, which is in West Africa. And that's because we're connected with Beautiful Feet International. And they have several pregnancy centers in Togo. And Togo is like real long. It's like Tennessee.
Yeah.
It's like real long and skinny, but like everybody lives on the coast, or at least people that are accessing us live on the coast. And so it's really easy to get women to a resource in Togo because they're all like right there.
Yeah. So when we consider reaching out into new countries, we're not just doing so willy-nilly. Now, if they're reaching out to us organic, like we can't control who finds us.
There's more willy-nilly there.
There's a lot of willy-nilly there.
Well, and sometimes too, like people will put things on their Facebook profile because it looks cool, but that's not where they're from.
Yeah.
So I can almost guarantee if a girl says she's from New York, she's not.
Yeah, her profile might say New York, but she's in Africa somewhere.
Yeah, and I had a client not that long ago who said she was from Paris, but must have grabbed the wrong Paris because it said Paris, Mississippi. And I was like, you're not.
There's no way.
You're 100% from Kenya, and you picked Paris because Paris sounds cool. I didn't realize that it's Paris, Mississippi, and not Paris, France. Which is super cute.
Significantly less cool, I feel. Sorry, Paris, Mississippi.
Sorry. Shout out to those of you in Paris, Mississippi. But I'm not accidentally like blowing her information out of the water because she 100% was from an African country. And not from Mississippi. Because I did check. I was like, hey, where are you from? And she told me, and I was like, yeah, you're not from Mississippi.
Right. So when we're reaching out to new countries from our perspective, it's not willy-nilly.
We think about it. We pray about it. We make sure we have resources and help. We make sure we can communicate with clients. And we try to do some training for both ourselves and our volunteers to understand what the cultural climate is, what the religions are, what the abortion laws are, and make sure that we're at least coming in with like a modicum of understanding of what these women are facing.
Right. We don't want to do damage, right? Like we're trying to be, it's not to say we're not perfect, but like we're trying to be mindful and aware and educated to the best of our abilities. And a lot of these places we're looking at where there are substantial resources for pregnancy help, but for whatever reason, they're struggling to reach clients.
Right. That's the dream.
So
we don't really want to send a ton of clients to centers that are already overburdened. Right. That's not fair. We don't want to work in a place where there's no resources, at least not significantly, because then how are we really helping?
Right.
So our goal is to find centers who are really well run and they're well established and they have a great, work ethic and they have great philosophy of service, and then partner with them and then just send them like 14 bazillion clients.
Right. So for those who aren't aware of how the chat line works, the short of it is women reach out to us with questions about abortion. It could be, where can I get pills? What do I do with these pills? How can I have a home abortion? They've already had an abortion. They've tried to have an abortion and have questions about what's happening. It runs the gamut for what they're
And there have been things that we probably can't say publicly on YouTube because we will lose our jobs.
For their opening lines, just all over the place. And then we talk to them, try to understand the situation. And our ultimate goal is to connect them with a life-affirming resource in their home country.
Right, which may be a pregnancy center, but it could also be a church, a hospital, Catholic hospitals in Africa.
Great.
Mint.
And in some cases, missionaries, because we have clients who are in... we have these women who are contacting us from countries that there's no pregnancy help network,
right?
In some of these countries, and there's no churches in some of these countries because they're close to the gospel.
Right.
And so, shout out to our missionaries that are taking on these women.
And some countries, like there's one country, a very small African country, where we just have one Catholic priest, and he's just handling all of the unplanned pregnancies in his entire nation, which is small. But also, I feel like he kind of agreed, and then like now it's like 6 years later, he's probably thinking, "Why are they still coming?"
But you know what? Shout out to him. He handles it.
He does it.
He's just like, this is my lot.
This is the cross the Lord has given me.
Yep. So all of that to say, we have a new country that we're trying to reach on the chat line, and this is a country that we can actually talk about pretty openly.
Right. There are some that we can't talk about at all, and there are some, like there's one that we really are working on reaching that we can talk about in like churches and stuff, but we could not talk about on a podcast. This one we actually can, and so we're very excited to work with Thailand. And we celebrated today.
I had Thai food for lunch
to the Thai restaurant. I was too cheap to buy my whole lunch there, but I did buy a boba tea.
It's the cheapest place in town to get a lunch. Like if you're going,
right? But my house is cheaper.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But if you're going to spend money on food in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, you will find no cheaper lunch than Elephant Number 8.
So yeah, if you're gonna swing by Slippery Rock, see the birthplace of pro-life without borders. You can stop for lunch at Elephant Number 8, telling you know we said hi.
Yeah. I love that restaurant so much. It's actually like insanely good Thai food.
It's very good food. I will say, now I am significantly less traveled than Mikayla. Like I've never been off of North America. Ever, which is sad. But I have read a lot. I feel like I do my best to be culturally competent, even though I haven't had the in-person experiences. I will say that when I went into the restaurant, the statues, it was overwhelming.
Yeah, I could see that. I wasn't really overwhelmed, but I also grew up
in Asia.
Yeah, I grew up in Asia. I've been to Thailand more than once. But it is a lot. There's a lot of idolatry going on in there. I'm gonna just be upfront. It's really interesting to me. Like I love going into the restaurant because
I'm
like, wow,
really beautiful.
Like you feel like you've stepped into Thailand.
Okay. And I think for me, someone who was like just living in Pennsylvania, not expecting to step into Thailand, it was just surprising. Like today was the second day I'd been in there, and I was fine. But the first time I was like, oh wow, this is intense.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me think, like, this is what our client in Thailand is experiencing, because I think here in the United States we talk about idolatry, but it's always in a very kind of,
it's kind of a metaphor, yes. like we're idolizing something, but
like your boats or your car or your house or your lawn. Like, are you pouring your time and energy into this? And I think we forget that real idols exist.
Right, like physical, tangible things that are being worshipped.
Right.
Which very much so is apparent when you go into the Thai restaurant.
Right, or to the country.
Or to the country of Thailand, yeah.
So I think it was a really good reminder for me that while we talk about idolatry in our hearts of putting something above God, which is good to talk about, right, and still a problem, you don't walk down Main Street of your town in America and see idols.
Yeah, typically.
Most of the time. And so I think that it really gave me just a heart for these girls in Thailand, and knowing that like it's just a different world, like it's just a different culture. And so when she reads her Bible, which hopefully she either knows Jesus or will come to know Jesus through talking with us, and it talks about like getting rid of idols, like that's going to really be very close to home. Like she's not going to have to sit and think like, oh, do I have an idol in my life? She's going to, that idol.
Right. Yeah. It's not like, oh, where do I spend my time? I mean, I'm sure they do that as well, but it is like a very tangible thing. So we're really excited. That launched this morning at the time of this filming.
We've already had 2 clients.
We've already gotten 2 women, and we launched it. So it's a little bit different just because we have had the hardest time kind of reaching into Asia. When we talk about the chat line, it's almost always Africa. It's African women who are traveling to other countries, and they're not always traveling to Asian countries. They're typically going Middle East.
Sometimes UK, like Europe.
Yeah, yeah, into Europe. So it's very, I don't know that we've ever had an African client who reached out to us from what we would consider like an Eastern Asian country.
Like, I think like most of the reason an African girl would travel would be to work as domestic labor, and Asians are just going to hire other Asians.
Right.
For the most part. Like, they're not going to import someone from Africa when they could just hire someone from like their own country or the country next door.
Right. So Thailand is a very unique country in that it's well situated for us to kind of get a foot in the door into Asia. But it's not a closed country like China, like some of the Asian countries we would consider closed.
Right. Or even like harder to get into.
Like Thailand is pretty open. And I think the biggest draw is that we were actually able to connect with a pregnancy center in Thailand.
Yeah. So again, the dream is to connect with a pregnancy center who wants to see more clients. And so someone had posted in a marketing group that I'm in on Facebook for pregnancy centers and said, hey, I'm in Thailand and we're trying to reach clients. Can anybody help us? And I reached out. I was like, hey, weirdly enough, possibly. And so that's kind of how the conversation started. And we talked, they are so on top of things.
Oh, they're so great.
They are extremely evangelistic, which is very important to us. They have a phenomenal model that I absolutely love. And they have a really cool manual that we've actually been able to use to develop some of our replies and responses to our clients, to the Thai clients when they reach out to us.
Yeah. So we've been able to work really closely with them over the past it's been months at this point.
Yeah, it always takes a while. I always think it should be faster than it is.
Yeah, it takes time, especially when we're dealing with a foreign language. Is really what slowed it down. In Africa, a lot of our advertising is in English. We don't actually run ads in Africa that are in a foreign. Well, I guess the exception would be Togo. Yeah, Togo's in French. But all of the other African countries that we run ads in, we run them in English because that's kind of a common denominator language amongst a lot of Africa. But we're actually running the ad in Thai. And I have no idea.
It's really pretty.
It looks gorgeous. Like Thai as a language really is so beautiful. Pretty. It's so swirly. There's like all sorts of little
dots.
and loops. I have no understanding of Google Translate's been very helpful. And it seems as though Google Translate is really on top of things in Thai,
which is great.
Yeah,
because honestly, the other pregnancy center could 100% be punking us, and we would have no
I would have no idea.
Like, they're like, so pretty.
Yeah, like, I really had to trust them and be like, they're like, this is what that says. And I'm like, okay,
we believe them.
Of course, I have no reason.
No.
And another thing that's been really helpful is that this pregnancy center is actually affiliated with an American mission board. And while we love working with nationals, and we think those are the people that are most helpful to reach into these countries, it is helpful for us to have an American to speak with.
Mostly so we don't screw up.
Because they understand our perspective and are able to gently correct us and say, you're probably thinking of it like this, but you need to think of it.
Yeah, versus the poor Thai ladies who are like, we don't want to offend them, but also that's dumb.
Right.
And poor Danielle, shout out to Danielle in South Africa. So South Africa was really the first country that we reached. And thank God, because Danielle was there to guide us.
Oh yeah, because we were making mistakes left and right. It was bad.
and she was willing to.
The Lord worked through all of it, but I'm really embarrassed that that's what he had to work through. That's
why we take her out to dinner every time we see her. We're like, we're so sorry for the first year of the chat line. Please let us feed you some more American food.
Shrimp and grits. Drink this mint julep. It'll be fine.
So it is helpful for us because one of the challenges is coming into a relationship as an American is they don't want to offend us because they want us to help. And they don't want to make us upset. And they don't realize that we're very hard to upset.
Right. You and I are. And I'm sure and I feel awful because you just know that people have that, I don't want to say bias, but like that inclination, like, oh, I don't want to upset them because XYZ will happen.
Right.
Because some Americans went in with the white savior complex, which is really frustrating. And that's the exact opposite of what we want to do.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. So sometimes like we could even be asking like, oh, is this right? Is this what you want us to do? And they might be hesitant to say, oh, that's not right, because they don't want to offend us. They don't want to lose the help. And so having an American in the mix who's willing to be like, hey, like this is how it is, and then we can be like, oh, thank you. That's so much easier.
Right. And I mean, we try to communicate the perspective we're coming from and be like, are we right in assuming this or thinking it this way? But it's just helpful to have an American who can kind of anticipate the perspective,
right?
And kind of serve as an in-between liaison.
Yeah. So one of the things that we did a lot of research on before we launched the ad is how to share the gospel with a Buddhist.
Right.
So it's really different. We obviously share the gospel here in the United States, which is easy. I used to think it was hard.
It's so easy.
But when you're talking to someone who has your own culture and your own cultural understanding, guys, it's not bad.
It's a breeze.
It's a breeze. And then in Africa has been very Christianized.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a lot of mixing of tribal religion and Christianity that sometimes you have to tease apart, but like we don't really do that. Like that's more for their faith leader, their pastor. Like that's not really something we would necessarily go after unless it was like in relationship to pregnancy and abortion.
Right. And we've gotten pretty good at like the very big distinct, like we know the cultural differences that we have between the United States and a lot of African countries to know kind of what entry point we need to use to share the gospel. Right. Like we learned pretty early on that the concept of adoption is not culturally prevalent in Africa, even amongst Christians. Like it's just not something that Africans are,
they just don't like it.
They just don't like it. And that's fine. Like but that's, obviously, and I think in the States we use terminology of adoption pretty commonly when we talk about salvation and the gospel. That would be tough
to talk to an African.
And so that's not necessarily the most effective way to speak with someone in Africa about the gospel.
Yeah. And then if we're talking to a European, we're pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't really reached into South America, Central America. We've had a sprinkling of clients from there, but nothing. Yeah. We don't reach out in Spanish. So that kind of limits that. So reaching out to Buddhists is brand new for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've watched a ton of how to share the gospel with a Buddhist and how to talk about it. One of the things that I found was most interesting in my research, and I am not an expert on Buddhism or sharing the gospel with one, but I was watching the guy that talks about stealery. Who is that?
Ray Comfort. Ray Comfort. Yeah, okay. Living Water's like, are you a stealer?
Anyway, so that was an earlier episode. You're welcome to try and find it if you want. So he was talking to two Buddhist girls, and he started with, "Are you afraid to die?" Which I'm guessing is kind of a standard question for him. And they're like, "No."
They just reincarnate.
Right, because they're like, everyone dies. And then you just come back.
Yeah,
and he was like,
people have died a gazillion times over.
Yeah, and you could tell he was like, oh. But it's really interesting because the fear of death is a huge thing in Western culture, and they're not.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no.
I would say even in Africa, like the concept of death is pretty prevalent in the conversations. They view it differently because you have to like introduce people to ancestors and whatnot. But yeah, like Buddhists are just kind of.
And I think that
try again next time.
That's something I noticed because I love reading about China and other Asian countries, and people, they really aren't bothered by people dying.
No, it's just kind of a fact of life, part of it. And then I think I think some of it's more cultural than it is spiritual, but then there's the spiritual component of like, well, like they'll reincarnate, hope they behaved, and that you come back as something cool,
right? And then the other thing that's really interesting that we've talked about at length is that one of the big draws for a Buddhist for the gospel is escaping that karmic cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as death is not necessarily feared because you're just going to be reborn as something else, mm-hmm. It must feel exhausting because sometimes, and I realize I'm not old, but sometimes you're just tired.
Yeah, no, I feel that, and I'm definitely not old, but I feel old. I'm old on the inside. In my heart, I am old.
And so I think, okay, God has called me to this work,
mm-hmm.
and this family and these children, and it's hard, but it's not forever. Like I will get to the end of my life, which I'm probably like halfway-ish through at this point.
I don't remember how old you are.
I'm 37.
Probably a little bit less than halfway.
Less.
Yeah, women tend. If you were a man, you're halfway.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess I should have a midlife crisis, but I don't have time. But like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna work really hard and do what the Lord has called me to do, and then I'm gonna enter into eternal rest.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize that that's not soon. I mean, maybe that's 40 years away. Maybe that's 50 years away.
It
Maybe
could be tomorrow. We don't know.
It could be today. I don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. But the thought of just being like reborn and maybe as a slightly higher being because I worked my tail off for 80 years is kind of depressing. And what do I get to come back as? A man?
Ew.
A cow? Like, I don't know what my options are.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
I don't know I don't know Buddhism enough to know if you get a choice. I think you just
well, no,
like
I don't
do you like is
like
there
the
like
idea
some
is
sort
if
of
you work hard enough,
that you would come back better and better.
Yeah. So what's better than a human female? Like, I feel like I've reached the pinnacle.
This is it.
There's nowhere to go but down.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting, because I was watching a lot of the videos on Buddhism, and it's not an idea. The idea is not to stop sinning because there's no concept of sin.
Mm-mm.
It's to stop desiring.
Mm-hmm.
And so you shouldn't want anything.
Which I think is sad. When you think about it, I think the Lord gives us desires.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do with those desires and whether or not we misplace those desires, you start getting into things like that. But desires come from the Lord, I think.
Yeah. Well, and desires can be good things. Like
that's what I was like. We can desire godly, biblical things. The desire to help. I'm not married, and a lot of people in my circles talk about like the desire to have a spouse. Like that is a biblical, godly thing to pursue. Or to have children. That's like a biological thing as well as
right.
Like these are all healthy desires to have. Yeah, and so I think life would be sad if we weren't allowed to desire anything.
Right. And so then you're kind of in this struggle where you want to be reborn as something at least as good or better as what you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to do that is to follow this fourfold path. And one of those things is to become desireless.
Yeah. And then you do all that work to become desireless, and then you reincarnate as a snail.
Right. And how do snails have desires? It's very confusing.
Well, how do you like live your best life as a snail so that you can rank up?
Right. Like when you come back as a marmoset?
No, and these are legitimate things. I don't know a ton about Buddhism. I, as someone who grew up in Asia, the demographic that we were reaching are not Buddhists.
Right.
They have their own religion that they made up. And so I don't know much about Buddhism despite living in Asia. So these are like, I know it sounds like we're trying to make fun and, being kind of silly, but like these are legitimate. Like I don't understand a lot about Buddhism.
Right. And then there's also the element of cultural Buddhism versus religious Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very likely going to run into young women who are culturally Buddhist, just like in America, you may be culturally Christian, you know what Easter is, you know what Genesis is,
Mm-hmm.
you know what Christmas is, but you're not a Christian, you're not a believer. And where they're culturally Buddhist, so they have these cultural underpinnings of Buddhism, but they would not consider themselves to be like a practicing Buddhist.
Right. So we're excited to be working in Thailand. I'm a little nervous, but I was excited. Like I've been up since 6 a.m. I could not sleep. I've
been up since 6 a.m., but not because of Thailand.
I wish that I could have gone back to sleep, but that is just the way the cookie crumbled. So I was excited, especially to see that we already have clients that we've reached out. And
yes.
if all we get are 2 women in Thailand,
that's great.
Two lives are impacted, and that's enough for me.
Yeah.
But I hope that it does well. And
I hope that one of us gets to visit Thailand.
Yeah, I really like Thailand. My favorite Mexican restaurant is in Thailand.
That's bizarre.
I know, but it's so good. It's really good.
And even though we are not experts on Buddhism, we have the guidance of the Pregnancy Center.
Yes.
And all of them,
they are experts.
Yeah, they're all experts, but most of them grew up in Thailand and grew up in the cities that we're working in. Mm-hmm. And so they'll be able to guide us and help us if we're like, hey, this person is asking this, or hey, we shared this way and it didn't go over well, like help us do better.
Yes. Yeah. And they provided some really good resources. Again, like the handbook that they have talks about how to share the gospel with a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave a lot of really good insights because it is a little bit different than the way that I think we would by default approach it here in the States.
Right. And it's not that the gospel is different, but our approach should be culturally sensitive, because if we try to explain the gospel to someone in Thailand the same way that we would explain to someone in the United States, it's just not going to make sense.
Yeah.
And one of the things, so you're going to make fun of me. I joined a group. I love joining groups on Facebook.
Okay.
I'm a group E on
Okay.
Facebook. Like if I'm in groups about bugs, I don't even like bugs. I do now.
Oh, are you in
Entomology?
Oh no. I'm in I think it's called All Bugs Go to Kevin.
No, I'm not in that one.
Oh, it's actually anyway.
So I joined a group that is about it's called non-Muslims asking Muslims questions or something like that.
Okay.
And so non-Muslims or new Muslims ask questions, and the only people allowed to answer are Muslims.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
So it's really been interesting. It's been really interesting.
Oh, I'm gonna join.
You should. It's really fascinating. But one of the things I've noticed is that Islam. So of the major religions, really only, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm talking major, okay? I'm not talking about like little cult kind of stuff. Christianity and Islam are kind of the only two that are evangelical. Most other religions are not interested in converting you to their religion.
Right. Like they might let you convert if you meet certain criteria, but they're not typically, like Jews are not typically.
They have no desire to help the rest of us.
And my understanding is they actually make it like incredibly difficult to convert to Judaism. I think that's probably fair.
Yeah. And then, I mean, and I would say atheism is a religion, and that would be different. Atheists love converting people to atheism. But if we're talking about true religions with the God, it's Islam and Christianity. And Christianity, I mean, and you grow up with it, so you don't think about it. It's for everyone. It's for every culture. It's for every language. And that's one of the things that we're constantly saying, right? Like, I remember sharing the gospel with a girl in Nepal, and she's like, wow, that's beautiful. And I was like, yeah, well, you can have it. Like, it's not just mine. It's not just for America. It's for the entire world. Come as you are. Share your faith in your own language, whatever. And the thing I'm noticing about Islam is it's very Arabic specific.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you have to like say, when you convert to Islam, you have to say this very specific set of words, and it really should be said in Arabic. And you should really learn to read the Quran in Arabic, and you should learn to do your prayers in Arabic. And it's very limiting because like white Americans are coming into this group because they want to become Islam.
Arabic is a difficult language for Americans to learn. Maybe other countries are have a better shot at it, but I had several Islamic colleagues when I was in grad school, and they would try to teach, like, my tongue, I can't.
Right.
I can't.
People have to like practice and practice and practice even to say like the basic statement of like, I want to become Islamic. And then they were talking about even like you're not supposed to touch the Quran with your hands or like on your period or whatever. And they're like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's a translation. It's not really the Quran.
Right.
So if you go through your whole like life as a Muslim and never read a Quran in Arabic, you're not really reading the real thing. And this isn't, I'm not trying to run Islam down. It just really has opened my eyes to the beauty of Christianity and the fact that Jesus came for everyone. Like, and he doesn't expect a Thai girl to come to him in English. Right. Or come to him in Hebrew or come to him in Aramaic.
That's like, what I was thinking was like, yeah, you know, we know that the Bible originally Greek and Hebrew is what it was written in, but it's not like, it's for the Jews and the Gentiles.
Right.
And so you don't have to speak Hebrew or Greek to be able to participate.
Yes.
Maybe if you wanted to like get into the nitty gritty of Bible translation, it would be helpful. But
right, but as
to participate, you don't have to speak Greek or Hebrew or
it's like for everyone. The work of Wycliffe Bible translators, just making sure or working to make sure that the Bible is in every language on the face of the planet.
Yeah, faithfully. I love them so much. I used to.
I wanted to be a translator, but I'm not smart enough.
Same. In fact, my school asked me if I would major in linguistics when I enrolled.
Geneva?
Yeah. Yeah, they were starting a linguistics program, and I guess my high school transcript has multiple languages on it because of how I grew up.
Yeah.
And they were like, you should be a linguistics major and you could translate Bibles into other languages. And I was like, guys, I barely made it through high school French. Let's not.
No, I've always wanted to be a missionary. I've always wanted to be a missionary to unreached peoples somehow. And God has provided that through like what I do at the center. Thankfully in English because I'm not good.
I told my parents when I was like 6 that I wanted to be a missionary to Africa. I know, isn't that cute?
So I told,
and then I went to Africa, and I was like, I am so glad that the Lord has blessed me with a home in the United States, and that I can do that work.
Yeah. From so I have been wanting to be a pro-life missionary since I was 12.
Nice,
which is a weird thing to want as a 12-year-old. But I remember vividly at like 13 or 14 years old, explaining to my dad like how I was going to run my maternity home one day.
Nice. I wanted to be a meteorologist when I was a kid. But then so lame.
You just
so
wanted to be pretty on
nerdy.
TV. That was
No,
it.
I wanted to go chase tornadoes.
Oh.
I wanted to
okay.
chase tornadoes. That is what I wanted to do all the way up through, even though I was like also talking about being a missionary in Africa. Like I wanted to be a storm chaser so
Okay.
bad up until I took the SAT. And the SAT was like, perhaps you should reconsider your career in meteorology. And I was like, bet. And that's how I ended up as a communication major. It's
There you
because
go.
I was like, I can't chase tornadoes. Maybe I can report the weather. I can't do either.
But it's still working out.
But it's worked out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to Geneva, majoring in human resources because my thought was I didn't know pregnancy centers existed.
Mm-hmm.
Like I should have, because our church.
You were an HR major?
Yeah, for like a minute.
Okay.
So I majored in HR, and I realized it just was not a good fit. Like I was learning stuff, but I was like, no, I really want to be in ministry.
Yeah.
And so I ended up switching to human services.
Yeah, that makes
just like
sense.
one little
Yeah.
bop down the alphabet from human
Yeah.
resources to human services. And I minored in business, which was also really helpful.
Helpful. Yeah.
And if I ever do get my master's, which I would love to do, I'll get my MBA because that's really helpful in running a ministry. But yeah, human services was way more useful than
My master's is in yapping. That's what I tell people. I
You're
have a
good at
master's
it.
degree in yapping.
I'm sure comms coming up soon.
I don't want to talk about it. Not on air.
We'll talk after.
Anyway, yeah, Thailand, to bring it all back. We're working in Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting. It's difficult just because it is a culture that we're not used to. And to be honest, we're used to Africans.
Yep.
Like we're very
it's English.
Yeah. I was like, there's the language aspect of it. Even though we come across Africans that don't speak English, I would say that we're pretty comfortable translating with things like Zulu, like to the point where I can tell the difference between Swahili and Zulu.
Yeah, me too.
And occasionally you get Afrikaans, which is bizarre because it sounds Dutch. And like I know if I've got someone who sounds Dutch on the chat line, they're probably South African.
Oh yeah. Afrikaans is a weird dialect.
It's so bizarre. I'm so fascinated by Afrikaans. So we're comfortable, and we've been working in and with Africans for 5 years, 6 years.
Almost 6. And it's time to get uncomfortable.
And it's time to get uncomfortable. And I mean, like I said, I've been to Thailand. I would not say that I'm comfortable with sharing the gospel with Thai people or with people who practice Buddhism. And the whole pregnancy help scene is different in Thailand than Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm excited, but it is nerve-wracking. And so we would appreciate your prayers that the ad would reach the women that it needs to reach, and that they would respond, and that we would be able to provide help. And the worst case scenario, we have the resource in Thailand, like that it's in a saved reply in Thai. So like worst case scenario, I'm just going to keep
That's what I do in Sydney City.
I've got no idea what you're saying. I'm just going to keep sending this phone number.
Please just call them. They can talk to you. They're so much smarter.
But it does. It says like this resource is in your country and can speak your language. And this is what they're not going to provide. But here's some things that they can talk to. And I'm just going to spam it.
And we also have the gospel using the resources given to us by the Pregnancy Center in Thailand, translate into Thai so that we can share it in a culturally sensitive and correct linguistic way.
Like that way. I mean, Google Translate is helpful, and we do rely on it quite a bit, but with things like the gospel, we wanted to make sure that everything is understandable. I don't want them having to kind of cherry pick and figure out, like, take a guess at what we're saying, which admittedly sometimes I have to do with Google Translate.
I do that when I'm not using Google Translate.
Yeah, sometimes I'm just like, I'm taking a wild guess at what you mean by this.
But yeah, pray for us, pray for our chatters. And I guess our Jesus moment, we've already mentioned this, but the gospel is for everyone. It's for you, it's for your kids, it's for your mom, it's for your neighbor you don't like, but it's also for girls, women in Thailand, women and children and men in closed countries. And as Christians, you know, that's our Great Commission, is to share the gospel, make disciples, and baptize. And I think as Americans, we forget that sometimes. And it's not just, although it can be, sending missionaries.
Yeah, missionaries are a good thing. I think, please support your missionaries. But not to be cliche, we're all missionaries.
We're all missionaries.
Yeah.
And that there are people in your backyard who don't know who Jesus is, just as much as there are people in other countries.
Yeah,
so
it's
think
for
about
everyone. This is kind of related to the Jesus moment, but I just remember being in a bookstore one time And I was looking through the Bibles. I think I was like in Ollie's or something like that. And I love looking at all the different types of Bibles.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember there was this one Bible. I think it was like the 365 Bible or something like that. It was kind of split up into days, and they had this big old sticker on the front that said "Now for everyone." And I was just like,
yay!
It's always been for everyone, but I guess they had like a men's version and a women's version, and this was like they had come out with kind of like a generic and it was just said "Now for everyone." I was like, okay,
that's hysterical.
It's always been for everyone.
Yeah. So if you are a Christian, just sort of rejoice in the fact, reflect on the fact that you are part of something that is so beautifully diverse.
Yeah, it transcends cultural barriers.
Yep. Transcends language, transcends culture, transcends gender. It's now for everyone.
It's now for everyone.
And enjoy that. Like that's a cool thing.
Yeah. I mean, and I always have to remind myself, and I tell this to every chatter whenever I'm supervising, because when I supervise, it is like fend for yourself.
Oh yeah,
it is.
I'm like, figure it out, you're fine.
Like, yeah, I'm like, you come.
Nicole's like, can I help you? And I'm like, no, you don't need help.
I love Nicole for that, but I'm like, unless this place is burnt to the ground and you can't find the watering hose, leave me alone.
If it's burnt to the ground, it's too late anyway.
It's too late anyway. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know. But I always tell them the Holy Spirit intercedes on our behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not us doing the work. I don't have to go learn Thai. It would be helpful.
Yeah, you should work on that.
I'm like, I'll just add it to my list of things to do.
I did 2 Duolingo courses on Swahili.
Yeah, I started the one on Swahili, and then I was like, wow, this is a lot. I think I got to Hakuna Matata, and I was like, you know what, that's enough for me.
I think that it means no worries.
It means no worries. And that's like an actual Swahili phrase. I don't know why it didn't dawn on me until I got to Kenya that was the thing.
Yeah, so the only thing I learned from Duolingo, which is actually really helpful, is that Swahili is not a gendered language. And so when we translate it, all the pronouns come out as him, which was really confusing until I did my 2 lessons of Duolingo, and the little bird told me they don't have genders in their language.
Yeah.
I mean, they have genders. They don't have pronouns. Gendered pronouns.
Yeah, gendered pronouns. Yeah. So the gospel's for everyone.
And
that's it.
And you should tell people.
And you should tell people. And if you're scared of telling people, just pray for the Holy Spirit to intercede on your behalf.
And watch some Ray Comfort videos. And
yes, they're so good. Living Waters Ministry, I think, is what they... I'm trying to remember the name of like the series where they go out and do like evangelism. I mean,
if you go on YouTube and look up Ray Comfort evangelism, you'll find it.
He's a hoot. I love him so much.
Have you met him?
No. My parents have.
Okay.
Yeah. But I have not.
You should work on that.
I should.
All right, Ray, if you're listening to this, email podcast@promiseoflifenetwork.org and you can have coffee with Mikayla.
Could you imagine Ray Comfort on our chat line? We're like, here they are. Here are 1,024 Africans.
They're all yours.
Have so much fun.
You would have fun.
Oh yeah, that's another statistic. I don't know if we've mentioned March, the chat line.
We did talk about it.
Yeah, over 1,000 people. Please donate.
Because the reality is, if we had an extra $20,000 a year, we could hire a second part-time person and be fully staffed with not exhausted supervisors from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and we could consistently reach 400 to 500 more women every month.
That is, I think, one of the biggest, I don't want to call it a hesitancy about Thailand, but just something that is in the back of my mind is the time difference. Mm-hmm. So we're used to, Africa is anywhere from 6 to 8 hours ahead of us. There's one of the countries, I can't remember, it might be Kenya, that's like 6.5 hours ahead.
Yes,
like
that's always confusing.
It's, you know what, choices were made. I think, or it might be India. I think India is like 6.5 hours ahead. Thailand is, I think, closer to 12 or 13, depending on where we're at with daylight savings time. And you might be thinking, who cares about what time it is in Thailand? Well, if all of the Thai women are waking up around the time that our already exhausted supervisors are going to bed, it can be a bit of a problem.
And Mikayla and I both remember being up at 4 a.m. talking to women on the chat because it was just building up. And so we would answer them. And it's not a sustainable way to live. And I love my job. And if I had the physical, mental, and emotional fortitude to work 100 hours a week, I would.
Yeah.
But I've tried and I can't.
Yeah. I've done a couple of weeks that were like way up there. I don't know that I've done 100, but I've done some that were pretty dang close. And I can't do them regularly.
One time I worked over 40 days consecutively.
Yeah.
And accidentally told our board president via text when I was trying to text someone else.
Yeah.
And like, it was not a good day.
I think there were definitely weeks upon weeks of like, I've been working because of the chat line.
Yeah.
And I don't even work on Sundays, but I make exceptions for life or death emergencies on the chat line on the Lord's Day because it's life or death. And yeah, there was a period of time where it seemed like all of the life or death emergencies were only on the Lord's Day.
Or when you were in the grocery store.
Or when I was in the grocery store.
So the reality is we're just human and we need breaks and we need to sleep just like everyone else. And so we do need to hire a part-time person. And like I said, for $20,000, the low price of $20,000, we could save and we could reach an extra 400 to 500 women every month.
Yeah.
So if you want to be part of that, you could email podcast@promiseoflifenetwork.org. Help us share the gospel, help us save some lives, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, promiseoflifenetwork.org/donate.
Yep.
See ya.
See ya.